Hey, it's Delana Nova Scott with Third Power, and I am here with Mr. Sadler Vaden. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We're here to talk about something really cool, and we happen to be at the historic Ryman Auditorium. We're going to talk about Sadler's new amplifier. This is the British Dream Sadler Vaden signature. This came about when I met Sadler. We're looking at 10 years now.
Yeah, 10 or more, yeah.
We met, it's definitely more. We're talking 12 years. How about that? Sadler came over to my place when I was living in Franklin. We talked about an amplifier, and I had just designed an amp called the British Dream. And Sadler has used the British Dream ever since. It became his sound. And along the way, we tweaked that amp to meet more of the very specific things that he wants out of an amplifier, and I'll let Sadler kind of tell you guys about that.
Well, the first time I plugged into that amplifier, it was just like the sound I was hearing in my head was actually coming through an amp. And I was like, I can't believe how good this sound. This just feels like everything I want in an amplifier. I immediately took it out on the road with the group I'm in, Jason Isbell and the 400 unit. It just became my sound, such a workhorse amplifier too. And, over the years, it being on the road and getting road worn, I'd bring it in and say, hey, I want it to be a little cleaner on the front end. And so we would tweak it and tweak it. It always just got better and better. And so I think that's really what has led us to this, which is taking the best things that we did to the original British Dream that I played into this fantastic amp.
One of the things that you'll notice if you're familiar, Sadler's done a lot of videos with Premier Guitar on the rig rundowns, and it shows the amp, and it had the really cool, it almost looked like a character, right? Standing.
Yeah.
It's really cool look. I had somebody tell me one time, it looks like a stormtrooper from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, so, the face, of the helmet.
Yeah, you can't unsee that. But fast forward to today, and tube amps have a life to them. They really do. My job as a designer is to irrigate electrons to convey emotion. And then the reality of shipping gear, shipping costs, everything costs more. So you'll notice that this is substantially smaller in the head format. And yes, it's sitting on a 212, but the combo version of this is like literally half the size of the old British Dream, but it's a bigger sound. And as a designer, my job is to take what you feel and play in your music. And sure, I've got a 12-inch speaker, but I really have to design for about 1.5 inch radius to get out everything. So I pack a lot of tone, knowing that I have to have the sound come out about the size of the capsule on an SM57, so to speak. This weighs about 30 pounds. In a combo, it's about 31 pounds. The head version, this is about 22 pounds. So it's extremely manageable. But one of the changes Sadler wanted was a little more headroom. And in rock and roll speak, what I said back was, okay, do you want it to be Pete Townsend jumping off the top of his rig, doing a windmill and clicking his heels kind of headroom? And he said, yes, I want that.
Exactly.
And so to get that, I upped the plate voltage to 500 volts on this. To get technical, it's an M6 steel transformer at a 500 volts on the plate to give him that kerrang and that kind of energy so that when he needs it, he can express with knowing that that kind of power is there. And if you play a smaller venue and you do need to manage the sound, we have a technology called Hybrid Master, which we have a patent on, and that will allow you to control the volume you hear, but the energy and the feel is still there.
Yeah, you still get your tone exactly how you want it. It's still clean. You can back it down if you're playing, like Delana said, a smaller club. It's a super dynamic amp. It just, when you dig in hard, it opens up and almost compresses at the same time, if that makes any sense. I remember calling you and being like, hey, I'm going to Australia, I'm going to Europe, and we have to do these backline amps and stuff, and they're great, but you never know what you're going to get. And I was like, can you make me a preamp or something where I can take and plug it into a cabinet? And you were just like, why don't we just make you the amp? This is pretty much the size of like a Princeton.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. So, it can, You know, you can get a Pelican for it if you need to fly, or like you said, you know, you put it in a suitcase with a bunch of foam around it. You know, it packs a lot of punch, but it's, you know, easy to take on the road or fly with. So
You had a chance to play it on TV last month.
yeah, my first ride with it was the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and it, you know, it sounded fantastic.
Awesome. Awesome. Briefly, what this amp is 2 amps in one. I based the first channel, it's called 59 AC. It's based on a 59 AC 30. In 58, a British amplifier company came out with an amp called the AC 15 that had an EF86 front end and EL84s on the power tubes. Well, there was this British band blowing up in 59 that needed a little more power. And so they basically scrambled, took their AC-15, made it the very first AC-30, which was the same EF-86 front end, on a pair of EL-34s. That was their sound. And that's what this amp has, is it runs on a pair of EL-34s on the power tubes and an EF-86 front end on channel 1. Channel 2, and that's this input, is basically a plexi, a 68 plexi. And you have the 2 channels separated by the white knob, so that's the volume of each channel. And those 2 amps are in here. You can use one or the other with an AB box, with an ABY. You can run them both at the same time. Radial does make a pedal that allows you to tweak the phase so that you can make everything align if you're going to blend the signals. That's what this amp does. There's no effects loop. It's just straight up tone machine. How are you using the first channel on this amp?
Yeah, so the first channel of this amp I use, I mean, that's sort of my main sound. All my rhythm stuff, you know, is happening, and some lead stuff too. I'll use a clean boost and just stay on that channel. But a lot of the time, like when a chorus hits or I want a little more power, I just switch over to the Marshall side. Or if we're playing like a heavier rock song, it's Marshall, and then I use a pedal or something to boost or gain for solos. But mainly, yeah, I'm on the AC side, channel 1.
Then over onto the plexi.
And yeah, for a chorus, instead of a boost pedal, I just kick over to channel 2, which is the plexi voice. So I mean, it, you know, it makes perfect sense.
That's great. That's great. So let's tell these guys how we even met.
Yeah, so I was working with a great friend of mine named Paul Eversold, who's a fantastic producer, and I was over at his studio one day, and he said, "You got to hear this amp." And at the time, you were making those triangular cabinets where you know you could get however many of them, right? 3, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
3
yeah.
across, and then you could put the head on top. So he had one of those cabinets. Like, wow, that's amazing looking, but more importantly, it sounded just incredible. And he had the I think one of the original British Dream heads that you made. That was so I just immediately fell in love with the sound of that. And I think Paul met you in a restaurant or something. So
that's right. His engineer at the time was Scott Harden, and he and Paul were having lunch somewhere, and I was there having lunch actually. I think with my oldest son, and they were talking about music and gear and producing something, and I said, "Hey, hear you guys talking about music, and I make guitar amps, and they're the best in the world." And they, you know, they started laughing, but they could tell I wasn't playing.
Yeah.
They started laughing, da-da-da, and they asked me a few questions, and I think I was checking the right boxes. Just like, wow, okay, interesting. Paul came over. He called me later. He said, "I got your card, and, you know, I'm producing a record. It sounds like you know what you're talking about." So he came over, and I showed him, and just blew his mind. Paul and I actually, this is total tone nerdville. I was testing out the sound difference between power cables. The wall cable into the back of the amp.
Right.
There is a difference. And in fact, if you press me on this, I'll tell you that there's a difference in tone based on the direction your fuse is inserted in the fuse holder. There totally is. You have to get those 2 things right, because everything comes through that little wire in a fuse.
Right.
That's all of it. And there's a grain there, and it's got to go in the right direction, or it doesn't sound as good. But that's my job, is to know these things. So Paul and I were testing all this. He's like, "Dang it, this is crazy." And the 312, he loved the idea, right? Because you get rid of the standing waves because you have no parallel walls and all of that. He's like, That's amazing, and I think he's still, to this day, probably 14 years later, still
I think
recording
he
with it.
does. I
Yeah.
think he does. And at the time, I remember seeing him like Lenny Kravitz,
Lenny
Joe
Kravitz,
Walsh
Joe
had.
Walsh.
I think he had the American. He was doing the
He
American
was doing
Dream.
the American, that had a triangle in there.
Yeah,
The Who was on
that's
tour.
right. Yeah,
Um,
Simon Townsend.
yep. So lots of stuff. It was great to debut with a cabinet that was a triangle. It certainly got people either talking or laughing. But
Absolutely.
when they
Yeah.
listened, their jaw hit the floor.
Right. It's eye catching
Yeah.
at first, but then they actually hear it and they go, "Wow, that makes a great sound." So.
Yeah. So Paul came over and then it got to you and then you came
Yeah,
over.
he brought me over to the garage, and
Yeah.
I was just blown away, and Delana's a total genius, and yeah, it's just been it's been I can't imagine myself honestly having like another amp to play. It
Wow.
really is
Thank you.
just it's my sound. I take it with me, everywhere I go, and now I can go overseas and have my amp with me. So
Yeah, that's amazing. One of the things that I think is an important thread of why I do this and why did Paul care? Sure, it looks good, it sounds good. There's things
hmm
that look good and sound good.
hmm
Why did you care? Why did Lenny Kravitz care? Why did, all these people that have been drawn to this and really Third Power started with a theme. The very first amp I put out, which I always told this story even back then, was an amp called the HLH. And it stood for health, love, and happiness, not to get too metaphysical or human, right? But that's what it meant. I felt like life could be just, it could be hell out there. And as a musician, you still have to rise above whatever you're going through. You have to plug into an amp, you have to go entertain an audience. And I thought if the moment you plugged in and you flipped that switch and you saw HLH, it would immediately center you and get you back. It's like, yeah, this is my office, health, love, and happiness, whatever you need to do to get into your Zen and go inspire an audience. So that's always been my thread. And to this day, everything I do, I design, whether it's amplifiers or pickups,
goes back to that
it
for
goes
sure.
back, yes, absolutely. It's that emotional translation and taking what we feel and getting it to come out of something that's the diameter of the mic capsule of an SM57. And music creators, and in case of Paul, a music producer who has to capture music creation, this became an integral tool in your bag to make that happen. And there's tons of tools out there, but it became something that was just like, yeah, this is a singer has their microphone and a guitar player has their amplifier. And so it's pretty powerful.
Absolutely, yeah.
So much gear available in the world, from vintage stuff to newer stuff. What was it? How did you come to bond with Third Power? Was it something that was immediate? Did it take time, or what did it talk to a specific part of you, or you had mentioned earlier the sound in your head? Maybe expand on that a little bit.
Well, I love that you had two different voices, and it wasn't like it wasn't like a gain chant, or you hit a boost or whatever, what I'm
Sure.
saying, inside the amp,
It
and it's
wasn't a
higher gain.
trick. There's
Yeah,
there's
there's
those
literally
2 amps are in
there's
there.
2 amps in
Yeah.
one, and at the time, you know, I didn't have much money. I couldn't afford vintage stuff, and I love vintage amps, and I have some of them, and they, of course, sound great. Specifically, I was looking for something I could take on the road that gave me that vintage sound, but I could rely on,
Mm.
and it did exactly that. It was giving me the sound I hear in my head, but I know I could take it on the road and not worry about, it just being too temperamental. It was built well,
Mhm.
sounded great, and I had, with the Hybrid Master, I could, depending on the venue, big place, turn it up, not so big, turn it down,
Mhm.
still had the great tone, and the 38 watts to 18 watts with the original British Dream. It just checked all the boxes for me.
Gotcha. So there was a sound, the sound spoke to you, the build quality, right? Sounds like I'm tooting our horn, but these are made. It's no coincidence that you're getting these experiences that match and resonate for the desire for vintage gear, because since day one, I build these like amplifiers made in the heyday of the 60s. They're all point-to-point hand wired. Everything we do even our drive pedals are all hand wired. And these are, they're point-to-point turboard construction like vintage plexis. But they have some modern features like hybrid master and certainly modern circuits where there's no script for what I'm doing. I'm totally self-taught. If there's a will, there's a way. And this has driven me where it's not typical to be able to put two amps so different inside of one chassis. And so I had to create the signal path. And then how do you bring them together? I had to create circuits for mixing. And there's not just a typical mixer. I mean, you could read in a book, there's a mixer circuit, but it doesn't work right.
Right.
Not to get the outcome we're getting, because it still has to behave in a very particular way that's independent to each channel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I developed those circuits. So it's built the way you want. It performs the way you want. They are limited lifetime warranty. As long as I'm alive and as long as my partner, John Hurley, is alive, then Third Power is going to be here to take care of everybody and service the warranty. And they are built like a tank. And I do want something. I want this amplifier. If we're alive 50 years from now, we'll have like one long hair left, right?
Yeah, right.
We'll be playing in a cover band called Cardiac Arrest, but we want that to still be working.
Yeah, and I just, I need something to give me the sound that I want, but I need something I can rely on too.
Yeah.
And obviously things happen. We're playing real amps.
Yeah.
So things can happen, but it's I've never really had any issues being on the road. Like I need to walk on stage and not feel like,
yeah,
I've got a bunch of vintage amps, something's going to go down, and that's part of it too, but most vintage high wattage amps, you need an attenuator, and you don't have to. This comes with the hybrid master, so which is doing a little bit of that, and so you don't need to add another piece to the puzzle. So
when things can happen to an amplifier with vintage amps, it does become a mystery. Mm-hmm. Which component gave up the ghost? With newer components, I test everything to get a feel for its sound. But newer components can handle, if you spec the right part in, they can handle the stress. So that's one thing that newer that addresses that peace of mind. But I get the tone matched now to the point where if something's going to go, it'll be a tube. And that's easy. That's a plug and play, right? If a tube goes down, well, it tells you, hey, it gets a little noisy.
Yeah, you hear it pretty much immediately.
A tube is going to tell you, I'm going, it'll get noisy, it'll fizzle, it'll pop, you'll play half a song with no headroom. That's when you know something's going on. Now, Sadler can have a spare amp, just boom, boom, plug in a cable, and not even miss downbeat for the next song or the next chorus. But we're even putting on all of our amplifiers now the bias test points.
Yep.
You could even insert a meter, and your tech can actually watch the performance of your power tubes during the show, and if one starts to misbehave, he can actually catch it on screen on the voltmeter and know that during the next pause, he could literally pop in a new power tube. Absolutely. So it's like a race car. It really is. And when you're a race car driver and you've got a new song in the set, and I need to be able to take corner 4 a little faster without losing traction, and I get to be like the pit crew chief that makes sure you're getting the performance and the traction you need. Which brings us back to what we did here in this amplifier was take a British Dream and put those things in that you want to give you more headroom. So we have a switch here that will give more headroom. So in the down position, it's definitely cleaner. And in fact, the AC, they really wanted to be like the American amps at the time, a little more headroom. And so we actually get you there. It's definitely a little more American, even though it has that AC signature. Much more cleaner headroom in the down position. And this is a 3-way click switch that gets you different presets of tone, setting the low end filter and how much top end of that chime that you want to get. And then over here on the Plexi channel you'll get a clean input plexi in the down position on that switch. We call that orange glow. It's like lighting the tubes up. It's not a flamethrower, but it's definitely a little more
It's
fire.
close.
It's a little more fire in the up position.
And sometimes live, I'll go back and switch that up. You know,
Okay.
if I know we're going to be rocking a little heavier. So and that's just easy. You just go back there and switch it up. And
That's great. Is that later in the set? We're cruising. We're about
yeah,
45 minutes in. Okay, it's getting a little hot in here.
yeah,
Boom.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We
I like
also have
that.
a fan built
Yes.
in too.
Yes. So there's a fan on the back panel. It's on a switch. So if you're in the studio, I know we should touch a little bit that you're producing music. So if you're in the studio and you're tracking with this, you can turn the fan off. Playing an outdoor festival, stadium, it's going to be on for a while. Kick the fan on. You cannot hear it through the microphone. What's happening producer-wise for you?
Yeah, so this, you know, I've taken this thing into the studio. You know, I do a lot of Americana records, doing some rock records and some country stuff, and I find this amp just works across all those genres. Even I've done some pop stuff with it too. So
Oh, that's great.
you know, and it's really built for the road, but it looks great in the studio. Sounds like a finished record, like this amp. When you plug in and play it and it's mic'd up, it just, you don't really need to do a whole lot,
Wow.
if anything, to it.
Wow.
Once it comes through the microphone.
Thanks a lot for checking this out and for watching. Thanks to the incredible Ryman Auditorium for having us. And Sadler, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, you can go to SADLERVADEN.com, and I'm on all the socials, and you can find me on all that stuff.
You can also find out more about this amplifier at thirdpower.com, the British Dream, Sadler Vaden signature model. I'm Delana Scott. Thanks for checking this out.